Oh man, people have been asking for this for months, and here it is. The Motorhome 440, ready for some budget bolt-ons, including Thermoquad. Taking it from there, this is basically the same soul of the General Mayhem. It's a bone stock Motorhome 440. We're gonna hop it up, but Dulcich, how come this isn't a grease pit?
Oh man, I just had to spiff it up, Freiburger, and you couldn't bring this thing the way it looked.
Oh, you're Steve Dulcich.
Yeah.
I know.
Plus, I mean, I had to do a couple of little things to it before it was dyno ready. I mean, it had the truck oil pan on it, so I put the passenger car 6-quart pan on it. The heads had to come off because I had machined the guide, so I have enough room for a high lift cam without the retainers hitting the guide. While I was at it, I put in Comp 911 springs because I'm gonna put a bigger cam in here a little later on, and we need more spring to do that. Other than that though, you're looking at an authentic bone stock Motorhome 440.
Which means what?
It means...
Tell me a compression ratio,
Well,
Dulcich.
here's the thing, okay? Are you ready for this?
I'm listening.
At TDC, the pistons are 155 thousandths in the hole,
Oh
which
man, that
means...
just speaks performance.
Oh, that's 7.5 to 1. So after I put the heads on with the composition gasket instead of the factory steel shim, 7.4. So well, what's a tenth of a point between friends, right?
Right.
Up top, we've got stock iron intake and, of course, the glorious Thermoquad.
Naturally.
Oh, look, you're even wearing the Thermoquad colors.
Oh, it's a glorious carburetor. How could you not?
Now for dyno hookup, okay, I've got the MSD distributor, I've got the Mazir pump.
We're gonna run some TTI headers on it.
Yeah, but other than that, I mean, this is pretty much
Bone stock.
what you're gonna start with. I will say this though, I took this engine apart and the thing was like brand spanking new.
That was a perfect bend on the secondary air door.
Man, the fuel curve looks pretty good. Air-fuel ratio is actually right where it wants to be, 13 to 1 to about 12.5. So here's our numbers for our stock 440. Actually, it's not pathetic. It made 452.8 pound-feet of torque at 3,200 RPM, and then yawned its way to 319.5 horsepower.
So we're using the Comp Thumper cam. Now, the Comp cams actually came out with this cam just to give you a really badass cruise night sound. It gives you a really choppy idle and stuff like that, which a lot of guys like, but that's not the reason I chose it. I chose it because of the specs. Now, this thing has a 107-degree lobe separation angle, and that tight lobe separation angle is going to give me way more torque, especially in the lower RPM range and mid-range where this engine is going to operate. This is not going to be a 6,500 or 7,000 RPM motor. Now, the other thing is the installed center line. That's something that basically the engine builder is going to do when he degrees in the cam. And I installed this at 101 degrees. Now that's a lot of advance. It's going to make all of the valve events happen earlier in the rotation of the engine. So the intake valve is going to shut earlier. It's going to trap more air. It's going to help cheat that super low compression ratio, again helping torque and power.
When Steve was talking about this out at the table, he told you he was going to install a Holley XP. I countermanded that. That XP is like my favorite carburetor ever. It's also one of the more expensive carburetors you can buy in a 4150 series. This, however, is the Brawler, and I get people asking me about these all the time because we use them all the time because these are cheap and they always work really good. This one's an 850 double pumper. If I can find bolts, we're gonna have a engine ready to go. It definitely like that.
Yeah.
It's still not
just about 10.
Still not making 400 horsepower, which is what you wanted.
Yeah, but I mean, it's 7.2 or 7.3 to 1 compression.
Okay, so here's what we're looking at here. We've got the thing finalized. This is the best that we're gonna do with our tune-up. 476.7 pound-feet of torque at 3,500 RPM and 381.7 horsepower at 4,900. And the thing that's interesting about that is that we made a big change in camshaft. It didn't pick up much RPM at all. We went from a torque peak of 3,100 to 3,500. We went from a power peak of 4,400 to 4,900. Actually, the power peak, a difference of 500 RPM, that is actually predictable.
Yeah. I mean, it's, It's like putting a small block Chevy head on a 440-inch motor.
It's a bad
It's going to
head.
limit the engine speed.
And it's still 7.2 to 1 compression. There's just nothing you can do with that. But the big story is going to be, how is this versus stock? Boom. There you go. You can see that we actually made some significant improvements here. Man, Blueprint Engines over-delivered as usual with that Chevy 383. That thing made good power, and this poor Mopar has an uphill battle. It's clearly the underdog in this fight. And this thing was built at home by Steve Dulcich, literally at 2 o'clock in the morning just days ago. Let's go through the specs on this thing again. Same carburetor as the 383 Chevy, that 850 Holly XP. Same MSD ignition. This is an Edelbrock RPM dual plane intake manifold like the high-rise on the other one. This is 9.6 to 1, just like the Chevy. This engine has the same comp cams 230, 236 duration hydraulic roller as the Chevy, but the Mopar grind has a little bit more lift. It's 0.541 inches on the intake and 0.537 on the exhaust. Now the bore and stroke on the 383 here is wildly different than it is on the Chevy. And so what makes up the displacement? The bore. This thing has a factory bore of 4,250, and this thing is 60 over, making it 4.310 inches. And if you do the math, the total displacement on this thing is 394. But really the coolest thing about all of this is that Dulcich is sweating bullets. He seriously wants this garbage to win. Let's go find out if we're gonna make his dreams come true or squash him like a roach. Boom, 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 boom.
Oh, yeah.
Boom. I'm actually stoked on this. I hope it wins. I don't think it's going to, but I hope it wins. Here's why I think this thing actually has a fighting chance, okay?
I gotta hear this one.
Okay, so it's 10 more cubic inches. It has a taller deck height, so the intake manifold is bigger for more plenum volume or more volume, and has longer runners so it stands to make more torque. And the under chassis header design is a longer tube, so it stands to make more torque. So I think that's why it has potential, and if it doesn't win, it's Dulcich's fault.
Why is it my fault?
Because then you did something to overcome all those advantages and lose anyway.
These are rated at 335 horsepower. Freiburger, would you agree that there's no more famous big block Mopar factory head than the
906.
coveted 906?
Oh, I know, that's why the Mopar guys are gonna absolutely hate us and rip us to shreds, because that's the single best cylinder head ever manufactured.
This is the Edelbrock RPM. It's the best manifold for this kind of engine combination. I've got the MSD distributor. I've got the TTI headers with not a single ding or dent anywhere. These heads are milled to equalize the compression to make it the same as yours.
There's one way to figure this deal out.
So right now, you're saying legitimately, no facetious comedy, you think it's gonna win.
Well, look at it. It's got this happy orange paint. It looks good, friendly,
Still
and comfortable.
facetious.
You say absolutely no chance whatsoever?
I say no chance.
I say there's a possibility that it makes more torque, but not horsepower.
I say there's absolutely zero possibility that that Chevy is going to beat this Mopar.
There you go.
Now torque on that
See that
baby?
thing run?
The incoming torque.
Cool. It was huge.
Wow.
Here's what just happened. That was the very first dyno pull that we made with the 383 Mopar, and it was a legit nail biter. I didn't know what was gonna happen. We were all guessing. Dulcich had high hopes, but look at this. From 4,000 RPM on up, almost exactly the same curve between these two engines. But the Mopar kills the Chevy here between 3,000 and 3,800 or something like that. Just a whole lot more torque and horsepower. And we have to give more credit to the cylinder head on the Mopar than we did. It must be in the same neighborhood as that Vortec head, or it would not have repeated the same power like that.
I had 453 at 4,300 for torque
Okay.
and 427 at 5,500 for power.
Okay. I had 458 at 4,300 for torque, and 428 at 5,600 for power.